drummers against, implied timekeeping, the 5 greatest punk drummers ever. I want to talk a little bit about punk music and drummers in particular, because I think looking back historically, punk music and punk drummers in general have been maligned and mocked to the point where they're forgotten. And this particular video, I'm going to discuss a little bit about what I saw when punk came in. Now, as a disclaimer, this is my opinion always, and my opinion is just what I think of it. So bear with me, all right? To discuss punk, you have to kind of go back prior to the 70s, at least in my view, because during the 60s a lot of things were changing. But the first kind of punk type of drumming, I think historically, was with 2 bands, and one of them is going to surprise you. The first was Machine Gun Thompson, Dennis Machine Gun Thompson of the MC5 out of Detroit. That was the first band of its kind that was really hard thrashing, and really the word was not really invented in that context for that band, but I'm going to credit him being the first punk drummer because just the style. Now, they called him Machine Gun because he was just all over the place with 16th notes, hence Machine Gun Thompson. Like, that's what they called him. Now, MC5 came into their own around 1967, 66, 67. But interestingly, another band from the same area, from the same scene, the other, and as I say, this is going to surprise you, the first punk drummer ever, besides Thompson, was Iggy Pop, James Osterberg. Because before Iggy and the Stooges, Iggy, James Osterberg, was a drummer with a band called the Prime Movers. Most people know this if you know Iggy. Now, there's no recordings of the Prime Movers. There's a couple of pictures maybe, but Ron Ashton of Iggy and the Stooges, the guitar player, does mention in the oral history of punk, Iggy was known around, and he was pretty good as a drummer. The Prime Movers played blues and covers and various other things. They weren't a punk band per se. But I'm bringing that out in this video because of the close proximity between the 2 bands, MC5 and Iggy and the Stooges. But both their drummers, I think, Thompson and Iggy Pop, James Osterberg, were the original punk drummers. And to a certain extent, the drummer in Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. His name escapes me at this point, but he's another punk type of drummer who combined R&B. And I just want you to know that. Listen to the song Sock It To Me Baby, or Devil with the Blue Dress On, or any of the Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. So there's a kind of a weird thing of history. 3 Detroit drummers that went on to have separate careers, and especially Iggy Pop being an iconoclast beyond all belief. Those are the 3 guys, I think, from Detroit that were the seed of punk. Now, you skip ahead, because from 1967 to 1976, the radio was just with lots of heavy rock acts, pop, Led Zeppelin, of course, Aerosmith, Pink Floyd, Jethro Tull, the progressive bands, and punk itself was germinating between these years, because punk was a reactionary movement to what was going on. It wasn't just invented creatively in and of itself. It was a reaction to what was going on. You could feel it when I was growing up in my teenage years. I happened to like Yes and Jethro Tull because obviously the drummers were great and the music was really technical and innovative. But there was a groundswell in London and in America as well that no one knew about. I didn't know about it, nobody knew about it, but it was there. And it was a lot of people who were reacting to the whole thing that was becoming rock. It was becoming more theatrical in the mid-70s. You know, Queen and Pink Floyd come to mind, no question. And there were a lot of musicians that just didn't have that thought of what rock and roll should be. And it wasn't until 1976 and the advent of two bands, the Ramones and the Sex Pistols out of London, England. Now, the 5 drummers I want to talk about are punk drummers. And when you think about this, punk, as I say, was a reactionary movement, and it was a groundswell in every city in America and England and Canada and everywhere else. So I'm sure each and every one of you looking in have a drummer in your local town that was absolutely fantastic, because that's what punk was about. It was do-it-yourself and the ability to put a band together, write the songs, and just have at it. But the thing I want to talk about is in a general sense for everyone else looking back on it, because I was there well before punk, I was there just before punk, and I was there when punk broke. And when punk broke in America, not in England, it was around 1977 into 78. And it wasn't really hardcore in the mainstream. It was still very underground. And definitely not on the radio. You couldn't be a punk band on the radio. But I want to discuss these drummers particularly because they've stayed true to the genre of punk and punk drumming. And the 5 guys that stand out to me now, looking back historically, that I want everyone to know about. I wish I knew more. I know thousands of them actually. But these are the guys that I think from a style and from a technical ability should be respected and looked at. And the first that comes to mind is Spit Sticks of the band Fear. This guy had a unique ability because he could be creative with the band Fear. It was Lee Ving as the lead singer, and the bass player was a guy named Durf Scratch, tremendous player as well. And Spit Sticks could just do intricate changes, and I want younger drummers to know them. I don't care what style you're doing. Fear, the record, their first album. Know this record because I listened to it recently, and Spit Sticks is still a remarkable player for punk. He just, I think, brought to the table all the primal energies that are important and should be respected, all right? I forget his real name, but Spit Sticks is the guy. Punk, he's the man. Number 2 is the drummer in The Descendants, Stevenson. I think it's Bill Stevenson. You know, The Descendants came into the play as punk was rolling into the mid-80s, but he was a drummer. I saw him play. I never saw Spit Sticks play, but Stevenson I did see play, and he was really good. His time was excellent. He was raw. He was perfect for the band. The Descendants were a great punk band. I think they're still together. And he produced the records, I think. And he could stop and move, and his style, he just exemplified what punk is. Reaction to rock drummers and other things that were just revolting to punk people. Okay, so he's another one. Know who he is, The Descendants, Bill Stevenson. The other drummer I always loved a lot was the guy in Butthole Surfers, King Coffey. This guy was creative, interesting, had a great feel. When you talk about punk, usually you don't think of these things, but he did. He came up with great ideas. The Butthole Surfers are a legendary band, no question about it. Gibby is still around, I think, the singer. But know this drummer. I guess he's still with them, I don't know. But I always loved what he was doing. All right, that's King Coffey. The other that comes to mind, and I featured him in another video, Psycho Riffs in Rock. Please go and look at my Psycho Riffs in Rock 1 through 5. But the guy that I always liked a lot was Chuck Biscuits. Chuck was with DOA, Black Flag, and of course he was with Danzig. And you know, he's heralded as a great drummer, not just a punk drummer, a great drummer, and he should be respected. But for those guys who are playing now that have been grown accustomed to listening to, let's say, Zeppelin all the time, and Jethro Tull, or any of the progressive bands, you should know this guy, Chuck Biscuits. He was versatile, he was intelligent, and he was sought after by a lot of bands, and for damn good reason. He just would come up with interesting things in the punk genre. And I loved him. To this day, he's a killer, all right? And the fifth, and this is important, I leave him last, because in an age when branding is everything, all drummers are trying to get promotion deals, stick deals, drum deals, and endorsements, and all kinds of things. This drummer, to me, exemplifies punk at its peak, and it's the greatest punk band ever. And that's the drummer in the Sex Pistols, Paul Cook. Paul Cook is never discussed by anybody because Steve Jones, the guitar player of the Sex Pistols, was a miracle player. That guy he had sound and style, and he was brash. I think he's one of the greatest guitar players ever, and everyone knew it. Glenn Matlock, the bass player, is a fantastic bass player. And of course, Johnny Lydon, rotten, tremendous singer. No one talks about Paul Cook. Paul Cook is, in my view, the greatest punk drummer ever. His time was impeccable. He was just, the fills were just raw. If you go to God Save the Queen, their most famous song among so many others, the end of the first verse, he does the triplet at the end of the first verse when Steve Jones is bending the note. Listen to that triplet. Right, left foot, right, left foot. It's been done by a billion drummers. But Paul does it viciously and perfectly. And that's just a classic example. Another thought that comes to mind about Paul Cook is Submission. Slower track, being that the Pistols never really played fast tracks, but Submission and Bodies was another great track from him. You know, they didn't have a long career, of course, but, you know, I look back on Paul Cook, and he could walk by anybody down the street, no one would know. And no drummers looked to him as an influence and as a guy that could play the drums in a way that no one else could do it. I give Paul Cook a lot of credit, and he needs to be respected. Every drummer, every style that's against punk, and a lot of drummers were against punk. I was never against it, especially not after hearing Paul Cook on the radio for the first time. He knocked me out. He needs a real hats off and gratitude for what he did. And, you know, he didn't do any branding or endorsements. Does anyone know Paul Cook doing any of these things? He should be in a band now, but he probably doesn't even play drums anymore. But he's the fifth greatest punk drummer ever, and my favorite. So these are the 5 guys I think you should look at. As an honorable mention, and I mentioned in a previous video regarding the history of heavy metal, I brought up Earl Hudson of Bad Brains. I didn't bring him on this list because Earl played other styles of dub and reggae. But Earl obviously played thrash and punk, and he is in this list. He's one of my favorites as well, but I left him out because I just wanted to make it the pure punk drummers. These 5 guys, with Iggy and Machine Gun Thompson inventing the whole, and the drummer as well, and Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels, as the real genesis of how it developed and came together. I've had a lot of fun on a lot of these videos, but this one's my favorite to talk about because punk is belittled and, as I say, maligned and made fun of and mocked. It's looked back with contempt, especially the drummers, my God, before and during and then after. And a lot of these guys do not deserve that. They were really special guys amongst hundreds of others. But the video could be an hour. I can go on other drummers that were in this genre. So let me know what you think. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments section. I'll be glad to answer on any particular drummers or whatever. And I'm on Facebook.com/Drummers Against Implied Timekeeping, Twitter.com/Drummers Against, and welcome everybody to my channel. I have lots of videos in the catalog that deal with open-handed position playing, and I have a very particular way that I go about it, and it's to enhance your power, independence, and your creativity as a drummer. Please take a look at those. And of course, if you haven't, subscribe, because your subscription is the support for me to continue. Thank you always for that. This again is kind of an oral history of the greatest punk drummers that I can think of. And these 5 guys stand out. So let me know what you think if you have others. And my best to all of you for looking in. I've got a lot coming always on the playing side. People see me here at the drum set and think, do I play? Yes, I do. And you have to go look at those videos if you're into the open-handed position playing and learning. But these videos as well, I think it's important for a lot of younger drummers to know. All right? My best to all of you. Thanks for looking in.